Hello, this is Noah Zerby. Welcome back to my Model United Nations video series. This video series focuses on preparing students to be familiar with the rules of debate used at the Model United Nations of the Far West Conference, held every April in San Francisco. While the video focuses on the rules for MUNFW, the basic concepts of parliamentary procedure are applicable to Model United Nations conferences more generally. In this video, we'll examine how to control the flow of debate. Understanding and being able to control the flow of debate is an essential skill for success at conference. So let's get started. Nearly every conference divides debate into three broad sections. The first phase of debate is usually referred to as general debate or plenary debate. In this phase of debate, member states are exploring the broad contours of the issue and articulating ideas and approaches supported by their country. Speeches tend to focus on the broad framework countries support for addressing the issue at hand. During this phase of debate, you should be listening to the speeches and networking with countries that share your same approach and concerns regarding the topic during formal debate. In unmoderated caucuses, you will be working with like-minded countries to develop the draft working papers that will become the draft resolutions to be debated in the next phase of debate. Plenary debate tends to use a subset of the general rules of debate. The most common rules you'll see used at MUNFW during plenary debate include P3, Powers of the Chair. The chair uses this rule to set speaking times, limit the number of questions and comments after each speaker, or to suggest actions to the body. P23, Short Speech or Comment, is used to add yourself to the speakers list, or to comment after another delegate gives a speech from the speakers list. The various P25 rules, including point of inquiry, used to ask a question of another delegate after their speech, and P25 point of information, used to ask a question to the chair, are also common. And P27, suspension of the meeting, is used to suspend the meeting for caucus or informal break. The final rule you need to know is P30, adjournment of debate. This motion allows delegates to propose the body move from plenary debate into the second phase of debate, substantive debate. The P30 motion permits 2 speakers in favor and 2 against, and requires a 2/3 majority to pass. Once the motion is approved by the body, the chairs will generally afford the committee some time to complete their work on draft working papers and get them submitted for consideration as draft resolutions during the next phase of debate. If the P30 passes, the committee moves on to the second phase of debate, usually referred to as substantive debate. Substantive debate looks a lot like general debate in terms of its structure. The speakers list will reset, and the chairs will begin by opening the speakers list to countries that would like to be added to it. Once the speakers list is formed, you'll hear speeches from other member states on the speakers list. You'll still have the opportunity to comment through P23s and to ask questions through P25s. And you'll still be engaging informally with other member states during unmoderated caucuses. But the focus of speeches in substantive debate is somewhat different. Rather than outlining how your country sees the issue or what approach they would prefer to take to address it, countries will be speaking to specific draft resolutions under consideration by the committee. In fact, speeches will often begin by drawing the attention of the body to a specific draft resolution. Substantive debate also tends to include one moderated caucus. A moderated caucus is called using a P27, just like an unmoderated caucus. The requesting country still specifies the duration of the caucus, but unlike an unmoderated caucus, during a moderated caucus, member states remain in their seats. The time is divided equally among the resolutions, with some subset of sponsors having the opportunity to present their draft resolution and answer questions informally, but still through the chair, posed by the body. When the allocated time for the unmoderated caucus ends, the body returns to its formal session. Thus, many of the rules used in substantive debate are the same rules used in general debate. P23s, P25s, and P27s are still used. But in addition to these rules, P14 sponsorship also becomes important. During substantive debate, you can use a P14 sponsorship to add or remove your country as a co-sponsor to a resolution. In general, the chair prefers this is done through a note to the dais. The chairs will collect these requests and will often announce several at once. Sponsorship of a resolution is important as it signifies your country's support for the document. In sponsoring a resolution, you're effectively saying that you support the resolution as it is. Consequently, sponsors of a resolution may not submit amendments to a resolution they support, though they may still submit amendments to other resolutions. If you want to see an amendment to a resolution you're sponsoring, you'll either need to withdraw your sponsorship or find a friendly member state that is not a sponsor to the resolution to submit the amendment for you. To end substantive debate and move on to the next phase of debate, use a P30, adjournment of debate. This motion is identical to the one used to get into substantive debate, permitting 2 speakers for and 2 against and requiring a 2/3 majority to pass. Note that at any time the speakers list is exhausted, the committee automatically moves to the next phase of debate. This is true for moving from general to substantive debate and for moving from substantive debate to voting block. Once a P30 is approved in substantive debate, the committee moves into the final phase of debate, voting block. Voting block looks very different than the other 2 phases of debate. In voting block, there is no debate or speakers list. There is no caucusing or break from the formal proceedings. Indeed, during voting block, the doors are closed and delegates who leave are not permitted to re-enter. Voting block will begin with the chairs taking roll in order to establish quorum. Quorum is important because it determines the number of votes needed to pass a resolution. The rules used during voting block are very different than the rules used during the other phases of debate. Because there are no speeches, there are no P23s or P25 point of inquiries. The other P25 rules, points of information, personal privilege, or order, are still in order though. Instead of P23s and P25s for points of inquiry, you'll use a number of other rules. Once quorum is established, the chairs will entertain a motion to reorder the resolutions made under a P11. The order you consider resolutions in at conference matters for a couple of reasons. First, if the committee has 2 resolutions that offer mutually exclusive solutions to an issue, the chairs may rule a second resolution out of order if the first passes. Additionally, voting block can take a long time, particularly if the committee has many resolutions and amendments to consider. It's entirely possible that the committee may even close the agenda item before considering all of the resolutions, never even voting on the resolutions towards the end of the list. For both of these reasons, it's better to have your resolutions considered earlier. Voting on a P11 to order the resolutions looks just like the P10 you used to set the order of the agenda on the first day of conference. You can vote for as many orders as you like, and the first order to receive a majority is the order of resolutions used to consider. For each resolution, you'll consider the amendments to the resolution, and then you'll vote on the resolution as amended. Once you've completed consideration of one resolution, you'll move on to the next until the committee votes on all resolutions or decides to close the agenda item. This can take a long time. I've seen voting blocks that have lasted for more than 3 hours, so make sure you're prepared for a long voting block just in case. You should also know that P11 has a second use, deletion of resolution. This is sometimes called a P11 vote not to vote. The rule can be used to delete a proposed resolution with the body declining to ever vote on the resolution itself. This is a powerful rule at conference, particularly as it passes by a simple majority and does not allow any speakers for or against the motion. It's also something of a tricky vote, as a yes vote on the motion for a P11 is effectively a no vote on the underlying resolution. If the P11 motion passes, the resolution is deleted and will no longer be considered by the body. Note that the P11 deletion is in order only after all proposed amendments to the resolution have been considered, but before the resolution itself has been voted on. The second rule you'll see used in voting block is the P14 sponsorship. While countries can send notes to the chair to add and remove themselves as co-sponsors to a resolution throughout substantive debate, in voting block sponsorship can only be added or removed immediately before voting on a draft resolution. After considering all amendments, the chair will ask if any country would like to be added or removed from sponsorship of the resolution. Simply raise your placard and wait to be called on to let the chair know. Sponsorship going into voting block is important. Before voting on the final draft of a resolution, the committee will consider any proposed amendments to the resolution. The chair will read the proposed amendments to the body, sometimes while they're projected on a screen in front of the room. The chair will then ask each of the co-sponsors of the resolution whether they consider the proposed amendment friendly or unfriendly. If all co-sponsors deem an amendment friendly, the proposed amendment is adopted and into the resolution without a vote. However, as soon as any co-sponsor deems an amendment unfriendly, the proposed amendment goes to a vote of the body as a whole. The next rule that you may see used during voting block is P15, reconsideration. This motion essentially allows the body to re-vote on a motion that was just considered. Note that the body can only reconsider a substantive motion, such as passage or rejection of an amendment or resolution. Procedural motions, such as a motion to close the agenda item or a motion to postpone debate, are not subject to reconsideration. Motions for a P15 reconsideration rarely pass, and I encourage students to refrain from using them generally. While most motions require a simple majority to pass, a P15 requires a 2/3 majority and permits 2 speakers in favor and 2 against the motion. If the underlying motion you wish to reconsider failed to get a simple majority, it's highly unlikely that you can muster a 2/3 majority needed to reconsider. Nevertheless, the motion for reconsideration is useful if you think the body has erred in its previous motion. If the motion to reconsider passes, the body effectively hits the rewind button. The previous vote, which was subject to the motion for reconsideration, is treated as though it never took place, and the body is moved back to voting on that motion again. A motion for a P16 division is in order only after the proposed amendments to the resolution you wish to divide have been voted on and the committee is ready to vote on the resolution itself. A P16 motion to divide allows the body to vote on specific operative clauses in a resolution separately. When you request a P16 division, the chair will ask which operative clauses you would like to divide out. Dividing out an operative clause, or multiple operative clauses, permits you to strike them from the resolution, leaving the remainder of the resolution intact for voting on. Thus, a delegate could propose to divide out operative clauses 2, 4, and 5, for example, leaving operative clauses 1 and 3 in place. A couple of items are worth noting about this motion. First, you can never divide out all operative clauses. At least one operative clause must remain in the resolution. Second, while multiple motions to divide out specific operative clauses may be in order, you may not propose a division that has already been proposed. Thus, if one delegate has proposed to divide out operative clauses 1 and 2 from a resolution, another delegate could not propose to divide out operative clauses 1 and 2 again. However, a motion to divide out operative clause number 1 alone, or operative clauses 1, 2, and 3 together, would be in order. Finally, remember that a motion to divide permits 2 speakers in favor and 2 against and requires a 2/3 majority to pass. If you were determined to strike out or delete one or more operative clauses from a resolution, it's far easier to submit an amendment to the resolution to do that during substantive debate. While a motion to divide requires a supermajority, a proposed amendment requires only a simple majority to pass, making it much easier to get approved by the body. A motion for a P16 division is in order. Strike that. P16s can be confusing, so let's look at an example. Let's say we're in a committee and a resolution with 6 operative clauses, numbered 1 to 6, is being considered. Let's also say that we, as Mozambique, oppose operative clauses 1 and 2, but can support the rest of the resolution. When the chair asks if there are any points or motions on the floor, Mozambique would raise their placard. And when called upon, Mozambique would move for a P16 division of resolution. The chair would rule that the motion is in order and would ask Mozambique which operative clause or clauses they would like to have divided out. Mozambique would request to divide out operative clauses 1 and 2. The chair would repeat the motion back and then confirm that Mozambique would like to speak in favor of the motion. The chair would ask for another speaker in favor of the motion and then ask for 2 countries against the motion. After all speakers were done, the committee would vote on the division, with a vote in favor of the motion being a vote to delete operative clauses 1 and 2 from the resolution. If the motion passes, the resolution is considered without operative clauses 1 and 2, and the remaining operative clauses are renumbered. If the motion fails, consideration of the whole resolution continues. In either case, another motion to divide would be in order so long as the same combination of divisions, in this case operative clauses 1 and 2, were not re-proposed. The next rule you'll need to know is known as P21, method of voting, more often called a P21 roll call vote. As with the P11 deletion and a P16 division, a P21 roll call vote is only in order after all amendments to a resolution have been considered, but the resolution itself has not yet been voted on. Most voting at conference will take place with a show of placards. The chair will ask all delegates in favor of a motion to raise their placards and will count the number of yeses. They'll then ask all the delegates opposed to a motion to raise their placards and count the number of noes. If this is a procedural motion, the chair will then announce the vote tally and whether or not the motion passes. If the motion is a substantive motion, they'll ask for the abstentions and count those as well. Abstentions are used to not take a position on the underlying motion. It's essentially a non-vote. A P21 roll call vote changes the method of voting from show of placards to a voice vote. The motion itself is not subject to debate and is automatically granted in all committees except the General Assembly, where the motion requires a simple majority to pass. The motion is in order only for voting on resolutions and may not be called on other questions. During a roll call vote, the chair will call on each country by name in alphabetical order. When called on, a delegate has several choices. They can vote yes, no, or abstain just like they could when voting by show of placard. In addition, a delegate may vote yes or no with explanation. You cannot abstain with explanation. A delegate voting yes with explanation or no with explanation is given a short amount of time to briefly explain why they voted the way they did after all votes are recorded but before the vote tally is announced. Delegates can also choose to pass, essentially asking the chair to come back to them after the other delegates have voted. Note that you can only pass once, and after passing, you can only vote yes, no, or abstain. You cannot pass and then explain your vote. Once all delegates have voted, the chair will ask if anyone would like to change their vote. If they do, they raise their placards, and when called on by the chair, they tell the chair how the country would like to change their vote. After all votes are recorded, the chair offers time for delegates who wanted to explain their votes to do so. After all explanations are given, the chair announces the vote tally and whether or not the resolution passes. Following voting on the resolution, the committee moves on to consider the next resolution or to close the agenda item if all resolutions have been considered. Roll call votes can take a lot of time and are thus not popular when called. Nevertheless, it's highly likely you'll see at least one and often several called at conference. The final rule you'll see used during voting block at conference is P29, closure of agenda item. This motion is used to end all consideration of the agenda item at conference. If this passes, you cannot later return to discuss the item or to vote on any additional resolutions for the item. Normally a P29 is entertained by the chair after the final resolution is voted on during voting block. However, delegates can call for a P29 closure of agenda item before all resolutions have been considered. If done this way, the motion permits 2 speakers in favor and 2 against and requires a 2/3 majority to pass. This concludes our overview of the various phases of debate at conference. Hopefully you now have an understanding of the phases of debate, how they differ, and the rules that are relevant for each phase. Such an understanding will be helpful to you and hopefully will make you more successful at conference. Good luck.